So there's a famous book out there called Eat This, Not That. In this episode, we are going to take that idea, that concept, and help you as an athlete understand what is a better exercise and what is a worse exercise. In other words, do this and not that. There are so many exercises that, while they may be good for some people, a lot of times are a waste of time for athletes, and they aren't the optimal way. I want you to train optimally. I want you to be efficient and do the most productive work that you can in the gym. So in this episode, we're going to show you what exercises are better than these other ones that you may be doing, and hopefully you will improve your workouts and improve your performance on the court, get stronger, get faster, get more explosive by using these better exercises, these more optimal exercises versus these ones over here that you don't really need to do anymore. Sit back, enjoy Coach Sean and I discussing better exercises for you in this Do This, Not That episode. All right, we're live on Facebook, Elite Training for Basketball podcast, episode live number 22. Coach Sean, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are we doing?
We're doing really good. My wife flew to Park City, Utah this morning. So I am by myself with our two daughters for 3 whole days.
Oh man, one-man army.
Lots of coffee for me.
Lots of coffee. So.
Lots of coffee. I'm a huge coffee aficionado, and I don't know if you know this about me. I love old barware, like cool glasses to drink, whiskey from, things like that. And I have this coffee cup I bought in Krakow, Poland 3 years ago. So every day, my afternoon double shot of espresso, when I do it, which is several days a week, I drink out of this cool cup from Poland, and I like it.
That's pretty cool. I have something similar. I have some beer glasses and some things like that from Europe and Germany and some of my travels out there. So I drink beer out of like a German beer glass. I have a couple.
Cool. Yeah, I'm not trying to story top you, but that same trip we went to Prague, Czech Republic, and we're walking around the town, and one of the days we were walking around, it just started dumping rain. And so we dipped into this little pub kind of thing, and there was 2 other people in there, but it was raining hard, and we didn't have an umbrella. We weren't prepared for it. So we sat there and we drank Pilsner Urquell for a couple of hours. And when we left, because the guy who owned the place just came and sat with us part-time, because we were he's like, I don't have anything else to do. No one's here.
Awesome.
He gave us some cool Pilsner Urquell, beer mugs, which is really fun. So I don't really drink much beer, but when I do, I try to drink it out of that mug.
Remind me offline to tell you a story about raining. I got a funny story for you.
Cool, for sure. We'll do that after.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about, do this, not that. And I want to kind of put it out there that, in this industry of strength training, of performance coaching, of, personal trainers, there's a lot of that person sucks, do it this way, and that person doesn't know what they're talking about. And so, I just wanted to, and you can add whatever you want to, but I just wanted to say at the beginning of this episode that we're not out here doing this episode to try to make other people look silly, make other people look stupid. What we're trying to do is show you exercises that we've seen many people do, when in reality there are better ideas and there are better versions and there are better options that will help you get stronger faster, help you get more explosive, help you get quicker than that alternative. I mentioned it before on here, but I've learned under Paul Chek, and Paul Chek says there are 3, basically every decision you make in life, there's one of 3 options. It's either the optimal, the suboptimal, or the indifferent. And so a lot of this episode, we're looking at, because offline, me and you talked about, there's not necessarily bad exercises, right? There's not
right.
Early in my career, I was a jerk to some people. I was, I can't believe you're doing this. That, that's silly. That's stupid. But, there are better exercises than worse exercises, So that's what we're trying to do here is give you listeners better options so that you can perform better on the court and quicker. I don't know. Sean, what do you think about that? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I got a lot. I think one thing to keep in mind, and something that I learned through school and through my education, was we had one professor who always came back to, and then would answer every question with, well, it depends. Because there's no really right way to answer a question unless you know what the variables are. So it'd be like, hey, should I do this or should I do this? It'd be like, well, it depends. What are you trying to do? Like, what can you? Like, so he would go on. I'd be like, hey, is this better than that? He's like, well, it depends for what. So every question we'd ask would always come back to it depends. So like you
Yeah.
could see a video and see someone doing something, and they might have a very good rationale for it that we don't understand, that we can't see through the camera. So
Right.
I try and be as I don't know what they're going for. Sometimes I can guess and I can get a pretty good idea, but they might have something that they have a specific purpose for that exercise. So, I mean, we're always trying to have specific reasons and rationales for our exercises. And sometimes it's hard to see through camera, or when you're watching a video of someone, you don't quite get that rationale.
And we also don't know that individual and what they need. We don't know what their testing look like. We don't know, specific strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, exactly. So hard to tell. Everything kind of depends, and we may not know their rationale. And then I like to think that there aren't any good or bad exercises, just good or bad applications of certain exercises. Did you at the right time, right client, right atmosphere, things like that. So that's kind of where I stand on all that.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I agree. How's your training going this week? What's it look like?
Really well, really well. I've been working up to 85%. So I opened up another intensity level, hoping to get some 95% attempts here soon. Cool. But I had to talk to my coach about my sessions. Guys, okay, so I get 4 exercises to 5 exercises a day. And it's usually 2 warm-up sets at like 60, 70%. And then usually it's 3 to 4 working sets of like 80 to 85%. And it's, some version of a snatch, some version of a clean, some sort of squat, and some sort of pull off the ground usually. And they're taking me like 2 hours plus. I'm just,
what?
Yeah, I mean, part of that's me, and part of that's like I take like a 20-minute warm up, so then I've got about an hour and a half to lift, and I'm about 30 minutes per exercise. I feel like when I'm taking 2+ minute reps. I mean, when you're doing 80-90% intensities, like every rep feels like it's gonna just crush you.
Yeah.
So it takes a second to get back on and get into the next exercise or next set. So I was like, hey man, like my workouts are a little long right now. So thankfully he's awesome coach. So he listened, he backed off some of my some of the volume a little bit, keep the intensity high, but a little bit of the volume so we can get a little bit more work done.
Well, and your rest periods too, with those exercises and at 85% are probably quite long too, right?
Yeah, I would say 2 to 5 minutes average.
Yeah.
So I mean, by the time I do the warm-up sets, I can go through pretty quick. But if I have 4 working sets and I'm taking 3 to 4 minute breaks between those 4 working sets, I'm already like 16 minutes right there, if that's 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And the time on and the time off and getting water, whatever. So I feel like it takes a while.
You're like reading a book halfway through, just taking.
Man, I mean, I don't even feel like I have time. Like 2 minutes goes by and I'm like, fuck, already? I'm sorry. I'm like, man, already? Like 2 minutes? Jeez. And I'm sitting there like still breathing heavy, like, all right, time to get it. Like,
wow.
Gotta roll.
Wow. How funny. I'm actually taking a break. Last week we went to Charleston on Thursday. So I worked out Monday, Wednesday, on my own, did my own program. And then this week I trained the last 2 days. I say take a break from using someone else's programs. This week I'm also doing my own thing. Just to kind of back up a second. I know my knee's still giving me problems. I think it might be torn cartilage. That's what I'm thinking. But just do some regressed versions. Like today, my A series was just a Poliquin style lying hamstring curl and a split squat. And I didn't go front elevated. I went from the floor. I did go with a barbell. The hamstrings. I don't know if you know when I say Poliquin style, toes up, so dorsiflexed on the way up, which is easier for flexion, and then point the toes away on the eccentric on the way down. So I like that way. And so it was, I did some calf work. It was an easy day in terms of
nice
intensity, but there's some things I'm feeling throughout my body, and I thought those 3 exercises would be good for me. Anyway, we'll see what happens. And then next week we'll pick back up a program. So
hope that helps out. I know there's plenty of times in my programming where I'm like, hey man, I remember 2020, I had to take a big break. My knee was giving me a lot of issue. I took probably about a month off to just kind of, not off, but restructuring the program and kind of letting yourself build. I mean, that's an important point for you guys listening right now too. Like, we're just talking about injuries where we've had to back off our training program, readjust the training and modify to move forward for health. So it's what you do.
Well, and I've been going pretty hard since the new year. So, you know, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'm 41 years old. And so I think taking a week here or there and regressing stuff and getting more sleep and recovering, you know, people like to use the word active recovery. I'll jump in the pool this week at the YMCA with my daughter and do some swimming. So, you know, I'll stay moving and active, but yeah, definitely pays to take a week here and there. So today we're talking about what to do and exercises that are better than other options. And I thought it'd be fun to start with a funny video. We're not going to talk about, you know, these types of exercises. You know, this is a ridiculous thing to do. Granted, it requires a lot of strength and a lot of effort and a lot of dexterity. But I would never do anything like this, nor would I have any of my athletes do anything like this. So we're not going to go into, you know, kind of the gym fail style videos, but we are going to talk about things that we see pretty commonly that we think would be good to avoid and to give you better alternatives for those things. So Sean, I'm looking at the list. Can you start us off here? Just talk about some of these common gym habits that we could improve on. And then I'll let you just kind of wrap for a while and maybe jump in here and there. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely. That video, man, that was off my Instagram. You guys, I posted that. Two things I'm always thinking of when I see something that I've never seen before or something that like alarms me. I'm thinking, what's the risk to reward on that, right? Yeah. Is that worth doing? And as a coach I'm always trying to play the safest game to get the best results with my athletes, right? So that's not anything I would ever coach. And then sometimes too, you got to look at, is that training or is that for fun? So there's a lot of times where I'll mention box jumps on here, but there's a lot of times where an exercise, sometimes it leaves the training scape and becomes something that you do just for fun, just to challenge yourself and just to try. So those are also two big considerations to make when we're looking at exercises versus other exercises. Man, common gym habits that you can improve on. Here's something that I see a lot that absolutely drives me wild. And that's using an unstable surface like a Bosu ball. The Bosu ball is the half dome blue ball, or like an Airex pad, or the Swiss ball, the big circle ball. I love those things, but I like them for different reasons. What drives me nuts is when I see someone trying to do heavy exercises or explosive exercises on those pieces of equipment. Like I've seen guys do snatches on a Bosu ball or different jump variations landing from one thing to the next. And guys, that doesn't help us. So the risk on that is higher than the reward, in my opinion. I think there's better ways to train for power. There's better ways to train for jumping. There's better ways to train for stability and balance, which is what they're trying to do. They're trying to blend all these things together, but they're different adaptations that require different exercises, pieces of equipment, and training styles, right? So that goes along the same lines as like sand training. That's something that I see a lot of elite athletes do. They like to get in the sand and do a lot of speed and plyometric work in the sand for the same purposes that I don't like the Bosu ball or the unstable surfaces for speed and power exercises. Is they dampen or they reduce the ground reaction forces or the stiffness of the joints and the ability for your body to activate the stretch reflex, which is usually what we're trying to train, all the different jumps and that deceleration phase, that amortization phase where you stretch reflex. And so that's pretty much eliminated in the sand because the ground gives away. And so it's kind of negating the purpose. I do like those things. However, I do like them for recovery purposes, for balance purposes, for rehab purposes. The unstable surfaces I really like for rehab. There's good research on if you've been injured, it does help reconnect the neural pathways back to that injured muscle group. And the sand stuff is really good soft tissue, not soft tissue, like low impact. So good for joints. If you did want to take like a back off day and you want to do some landings or you want to do some conditioning, love it for conditioning. Definitely makes things harder. But we don't want to condition while we do our speed and power stuff, which is the next thing I'll kind of lead into, which is something that I see a lot.
Let me jump in there real quick. One of my a coach I used to work with, she's a high level coach. I mean, just brilliant. I always said she was a Jedi Knight when it came to training.
Yeah.
She always said a Bosu ball is great if you work in a bounce house. But basketball players, like if you want to be functional, your function is performance on the basketball court, and you push off of an immovable object. You're pushing off of the ground. Okay, sure, that basketball court, the hardwood may give a little bit, but when you're training on an unstable surface like a Bosu, you're training your body to respond differently than you want it to respond on the basketball court. And like Sean said, he's seen explosive stuff happen on the Bosu ball, which is just asinine. It doesn't make any sense when you're trying to become a better, more explosive, faster basketball player. So ditch the Bosu ball, ditch that stuff. I mean, I wanted to add that because I don't even own one. I probably never will. They're like he said, they're great for rehab, prehab, all that type of stuff. But man, do not use it in your training. It is not needed. Sorry, I wanted to add that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love it. It's definitely not needed unless your goals are like, rehab, balance. There's a lot of positives for proprioception, spatial awareness. We got Ryan loves doing the stuff on the Swiss ball where we're like balancing on there and working on coordination. I mean, good for like spatial awareness. So if I can get up on there and I'm wobbly and I can do motor tasks on stuff like that, that's awesome. I love it for that kind of application, but not for trying to get strong or explosive. Definitely the opposite thing. But what we're leading into with that premise of the sand being the bad idea for that same purpose. Sand's great for conditioning because it's soft. Another thing I see, conditioning is not the same. I'm sorry, speed and power training are not the same as conditioning. So if you're doing a program and you have a bunch of jumps and sprints set up, but you run it in a circuit style where you go through it so fast and you're sitting there and you're panting and you're out of breath. I know that feels a lot like a basketball game where you're probably tired and you have to be able to run and jump. That's the common answer I got was, but I have to do this stuff when I'm tired. So there's some merit to that I might consider that more like grit training or conditioning or like power endurance training. But we are trying to usually optimize a system. So I'm trying to optimize the body's reaction time, speed, ground reaction. I'm trying to optimize the systems that create explosiveness. So I don't need to, they're not going to be optimized when you're tired. There's like a force maximum and ideal conditions. How much power can I produce? How much rate of force development can I develop? And if you're tired, those things are lower. And usually in training, we want to keep them high so that they can produce maximal output. So your body says, this is the next level. I'm producing higher outputs. That's what my body's trying to do. And so if you're conditioning and you're tired, you're not getting fast, you're not getting explosive. So that's another thing. So those three things, I think, from an athlete standpoint, doing the unstable surface explosive training, doing the like sand speed training, and then doing the conditioning type explosive work for speed and power. If your goal is conditioning, I'm 100% okay with that, as long as your joints are good and you're not beat up. But for speed, for power, we're trying to take long rests. We're trying to treat it like it's a heavy exercise. We're trying to treat it to maximize speed and power. So
now, what about the excessive reps on plyo? What do you see there?
The excessive reps on plyo. So jumps, we know that rate of force development is our goal for anything explosive, and anything past maybe depends on the athlete, but on average, it's probably 3 to 6 reps. And you'll start to see a decrease in force. For example, if you're doing a vertical jump test and you do a couple, you do 2, you do 3, and you just start getting lower and lower and lower, odds are you're not going to get much higher the more reps you take.
Right.
So that's why the combine testing, they give you 2 jumps, because those are most likely going to be your 2 best reps. And they're going to say, thanks for your 30 seconds. All right, next. And you can actually, there's devices to measure this, right? There's Tendo units, there's like the GymAware, there's bar speed velocity measurements, and there's tons of feedback. It's called velocity-based training. So you'll be able to see If you're going for max effort, max velocity, the velocity based training, the units will give you an output, a number of effort. And so with that number, with that effort, you can see the decrease as you continue on in reps.
So plyometrics, we're not CrossFitters. We're not doing 50 box jumps, right? We're doing 2, 3, 4, maybe 6 at the most. But I, and I'm right there with you. I've seen a true plyometric as 3 reps or less. But I have been known to do box jumps to maybe 4 or 5. So.
And there's something to go for power endurance or some sort of endurance. Like think of a baseball pitcher, right? He's throwing pretty hard pitches consecutively for a long period of time. So there's a way to train for that. Right. I usually like doing singles or doubles or triples in that space of time. I know there's cluster sets, I'll call them, but one of my favorite things for endurance like that, if you want to keep going and kind of keep moving, is like 10 sets of 2 every 20 to 30 seconds, which is a pretty good protocol for maintaining that power. But it's definitely not going to be 10 jumps, 12 jumps. At that point, you're really just conditioning.
Right.
It's endurance training.
What are some other gym habits you see these athletes could improve on?
Let's see what else I got in here. Do you want me to talk about the speed ladder?
You can. I put that on the list, but you can start. Go ahead.
Nope. I'm okay with letting you handle the speed ladder. I like it for certain things. It depends, right? Like I'm all over this list, and I'm like, here's why I like it. Here's why I don't like it.
And for those listening, we are going to go into specific upper body exercises and better versions, specific lower body exercises and their versions, and specific abdominal exercises and alternative better versions. But right now we're just talking about some common gym habits we see.
And then box jumps is probably the last one I'll touch on because it's such a common issue.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I mentioned earlier, are you doing this for fun or are you doing this for training? So usually what I see with a box jump is someone finds the highest box they can or the highest box they think is physically possible to get onto. And so the issue I see with that is a few things. The point of the exercise of a box jump is to reduce the landing impact.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just do a vertical jump standing and you would absorb your ground impact. But we know with landing with impact, it's reducing, it's fatiguing. It's reducing our power as we go on. So the box jump, the goal is to jump as high as you can off the ground and land onto a box. Higher is usually better. But because it's a higher box, it's going to catch me and I don't have to absorb all my landing impact. So the box jump is there to catch you. With that, position matters to me. So when I'm thinking athleticism, I want my next movement to be out of an athletic position. So when I do the box jump, I want to be able to land in an athletic position, right? I got that quarter squat going. I got my lean forward. I'm on my, balanced. I'm maybe leaning forward a little bit. I got that ready stance. So on a box jump, I want to be able to reproduce that ready stance when I land. So if you're landing with your knees up into your neck, you're not in a good position to absorb load or reproduce, to absorb force or reproduce force. So when I'm thinking of that stuff, I want that to transfer to other exercises. When I jump and land, I can do a lateral movement or a vertical movement or a longitudinal movement. I can change direction because I'm in a good ready position. So if you're doing your box jumps and you're jumping up and you're getting your knees into your neck and you're just seeing how high you can go, I kind of like that for fun, for competition, that takes a lot of effort. Like you're jumping as hard as you possibly can. So there's something to say with max neural drive and rate of force development and some rate coding and some motor unit recruitment. Like there's a lot that goes on in that movement. But if you're doing a whole bunch of them, again, not optimal because you'll be tired. But again, we got to separate training from fun. So I'm okay if you guys want to do that like after a session or whatever. But if it's training time, the box jump is catching you. You're landing in a good position. You're jumping as hard as you can off the ground because that's the whole point of the exercise, is to create ground-based power. And so that's kind of what I got to say on box jumps.
It's a really good point because so many people look at the box as a
target.
This week I did a 24-inch box. Next week I want to do a 30-inch box. And in reality, what you said is absolutely correct. The box is just there to prevent the eccentric forces, to protect your joints, to limit that excessive wear and tear. And here's what I want to add to box jumps. anytime you do any type of plyometric, I don't matter if it's 5 inches tall, if it's a short thing, it needs to be performed with maximal effort. If it's not, then you're not going to get much out of it. You're just not. That's the point is gone if you don't jump with maximal intensity every time. So regardless of the height of the box, jump with maximal effort. I always make my athletes step down, not jump down, because then we're just negating we added a box to prevent that eccentric landing.
Jump off the box.
So I'm going to jump off the box. No. So we jump up, we step down. And a lot of times with athletes that can, hit a 30, 35-inch box or more, we put a box next to it. So they just have a little step to step down, and then they go back up. So that's number two. The third thing, Coach Charles Poliquin, he always said his qualifiers were, in order to use a box at your waist height, you have to at least be able to body weight, squat your body weight, barbell back squat your body weight. So if you're 200 pounds, you have to squat 200 pounds before you can even add or use a box that's as high as your waist. If you want to use a box that's as high as your chest, which many basketball players I coach can jump at a box that is as high as their chest, you have to be able to barbell back squat twice your body weight. Now that's not something that I use as a qualifier, but I also don't have many people jumping that high intentionally, because again, like Sean said, that's not the point of box jumps, is to see how high you can jump. Although I have done it in the past just for athletes because they want to know.
It's fun.
So, yeah, it's fun. It's fun to see how high you can jump. So that's box jumps. I wanted to get to the speed ladder, and Coach Sean and I agree on a lot of things. Some things we disagree on. It sounded like he uses the speed ladder for some things. In terms of a 52-week training cycle, I would give 1 to 2 weeks maximum where a speed ladder is at all beneficial, and it's right around the start of the season. I do not use the speed ladder. It's another thing that I don't own, just like the Bosu ball, because what you're doing is you're getting really good moving your feet in and out of these little holes throughout the speed ladder. And what I like to tell basketball players is, when in a basketball game, are you actually making that movement? I can't think of any. When you're on the wing and you're trying to beat a defender, it's a long, quick step. It's a fast movement. You're pushing off and extending your opposite leg at the hip, knee, and ankle, fully 100% to explode. Same thing in a vertical jump, sprinting up the court. So I never see these little choppy steps, whether you're going side to side or in and out or whatever it is. So speed ladders, while they are extremely popular and used all over the world in these athletic training centers, I don't use them, and I won't, because I don't see the benefit other than you're getting really good at moving your feet really fast throughout a speed ladder. And Sean, feel free to counterpoint that and say whatever you want to say, but that's my stand.
I'm with you to an extent, and I have another rationale. I mean, everything kind of depends, right? So
yeah.
A lot of guys will run conditioning drills through that. Sometimes I'll use the ladder, or we have used the ladder as almost like a distraction while they're catching something or doing some sort of other.
And that's different, I think. That's different, I think. Yeah.
And then, I mean, if it's just the drill, I rarely use the ladder to just be the ladder by itself. Usually the ladder is a component to a bigger drill, where maybe it's a warm-up thing, or maybe it's tied into a couple jumps just to get you out of position so that you're jumping out of different places. But I've read some books written by some great people that are for like explosiveness, quickness, and agility. And I think, to Phil's point, it doesn't teach agility, right? Because if you went back to one of our episodes, agility means you're reacting to a stimulus and you are making a quick decision and moving quick.
There's a cognitive component. Yeah.
Yeah. There's you got to think about something and do something. And then so the ladder is predetermined. You don't have to think about reacting to something. You just do the thing. So it doesn't quite teach the whole picture, but there might be some global adaptation of just quickness, just being able to move your feet that quick, or producing effort down to your feet that fast. You might get some motor control and some awareness to where your feet are in space. So some proprioception. And then these are developmental things too, right? If you're an elite level athlete and you might have great footwork, or you might have size 16 feet and you might need a little bit of just maybe some pitter patter. And just so you get used to where your feet are in comparison to your body. So there's there's some things, and I think those come at like specific times and points. Maybe they're case situational or case based, but like I said, it depends, right? So it's not as specific, and it's not really agility, but it might be global proprioceptive, and it might be maybe a little helpful for development. So depends on where you are and where you fall on that scale.
That's awesome. We are going to bypass that that dues list, and I do want to hit it at the end, but I do want to get to these these different exercises. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go through upper body first, and I'm just going to start going, and then Sean, if you want to jump in, you're more than welcome to. Let's see. I need to share this window. So lat pull down. Okay, when I say lat pull down, this is what I'm talking about. You're on the cable machine, you're pulling the bar down to your chest. There are many variations of this. Okay, this is a wide grip lat pull down. What I would much rather prefer is a chin up. All right. Now I know some people can't do a chin up, but the chin up is the king of the upper body exercises. If there is a lower body exercise king, it's the squat. If there's an upper body exercise that's king, it's the chin up, in my opinion. Again, that's just my opinion. Now, some people can't do a chin up, but I think even holding, we do a lot of isometrics at my gym where you're holding at the top, or eccentrics where you're lowering yourself very slowly. I think those are even more valuable to your training than a lat pull down. Now, I do use lat pull downs in my training an awful lot for various reasons, but I use chin ups quite often because, like I said, I think it is the king of upper body exercises. You're training your arms, you're training your grip strength, you're training your lats, and it is one of the top 4 exercises to train your abdominals, which people don't realize. It helps you transition. So the core helps you transition power from your legs to your upper body and vice versa. So this is an extremely good motion or movement for the abdominals, which you need on the core, especially when you're jumping in the air and you're going to make contact, or you're gonna get contact and you're trying to maintain control to have a layup or a dunk or something. The core is very valuable, and this is a primo exercise to train the core. Even if you can only get 2, do sets of 2. So there's 2 things I want to share about the chin-ups. One is frequency is important. So if you can't do them, or you want to improve them, or you want to get stronger in them, frequency is the most important thing. So most of my athletes, if we're in a standard 2 upper body, 2 lower body days for the week, they'll have chin-ups in both days. If they don't, they'll have them in at least 1 for sure. They're doing chin-ups weekly. Chin-ups, you can be here, and if you don't do them for 2 weeks, you'll drop quickly. So frequency is important with chin-ups. And then the other thing is slipping my mind. So Sean, I'm going to try to think about that while you talk.
Yeah, no problem. I did want to add up on the chin-ups. Technique-wise, what Phil's talking about, great exercise for the core, but that's if you keep your feet in front of you. You'll see a lot of people when they do a chin-up, they'll arch their back and they'll bow and they'll have their feet kind of hang behind closer to the butt. That's almost a cheat for your body. That takes the core almost completely out of the exercise. So when you guys are doing your chin-ups, make sure your feet, you can see your feet. I want your feet in front of you, because that's almost that anti-extension of the core. That's the job of the core, is to keep your spine flat. So that's going to help a lot of points, but or that's going to help in a lot of places. But to get the core activation you want on the chin up, just make sure your feet are in front of you and you're squeezing your stomach.
The other thing about chin-ups is because they are so difficult for most, it is better to do the same amount of reps per set versus doing as many as you can each set. So for example, if I want to do 5 sets, I'm not going to go to failure on set 1. Let's say I can get 7 repetitions, because on set 2 you probably will only get 5 or 6. Set 3 you'll probably only get 3 or 4 until you're just totally pooped out, and by the end you're getting a couple. Like, I would rather you do 5 sets of 4 even though you can get 7, or 5 sets of 5 even though you can get 7 for 1 or 2 sets, because you'll get more reps along the whole workout. And then technique wise, we got to start from a dead hang. Too many people don't do the full range of motion. I'm huge on it. You start from a dead hang and you pull all the way up as far as you can until your chest is to the bar or until you can't go any higher. And at the top, you drive your elbows back. So we're actually pulling the shoulder blades together. It's called retraction. We want to get all the way to the top, and we're starting all the way at the bottom. So that's a chin up. The second one I wanted to go over is the overhead press. Now, the barbell overhead press is a very common exercise. Many people do it. When you do it, full range of motion, all the way up, all the way down. But what people don't know is that, let's see, let's pause this. So when you're pressing up, your shoulder blades are on the back of your body. So imagine these are my shoulder blades. And when I press up, they spread apart. They can only spread apart so far. Okay. So if we do a single arm, that one shoulder blade stays still while the other can go actually farther up than it could otherwise if you moved both of them, right? So I like to do the single arm overhead press at the beginning of a training cycle, because it trains the glenohumeral joint. It trains your shoulder and gets you that scapulothoracic rhythm. Sean's smiling because I'm using fancy words. Is that right?
I'm smiling because your accent on fancy word. You say glenohumeral, I say glenohumeral.
It probably is glenohumeral. Yeah, I used to say acetabellum, and I think it's pronounced acetabulum.
Acetabulum, yeah.
But I still say acetabellum sometimes.
It's like when someone says hypertrophy.
Oh man, I get that a lot with talking to foreigners. You know. So if you see here in the back, so we have the two shoulder blades, okay? And again, they can only move apart so far. So if one is locked in and not moving, then this one can go even farther. So I'm a big fan of the single arm shoulder press. And I think it's a really good exercise to add into your program if you're not doing it. And you'll be shocked at how difficult it is starting all the way down and then going all the way up. We're not going to show barbell bench press, but everyone knows a barbell bench press. Get away from the bar and try a dumbbell press and use a neutral grip. And if you noticed with the shoulder press too, the guy used a barbell. So anatomically neutral, our hands are closer to, let me see if I can see myself on screen. Our hands are closer to here rather than here. So when we're using a barbell, we're always pronated. Neutral grip is easier on the shoulder. It's more anatomically correct, and it will add the gains. It will make it better in the long term if you're strong in that sagittal plane with your hands, okay, being in a neutral position. So if you're always doing a barbell bench press, get to try some neutral grip dumbbell bench presses for a little bit and then go back. Another reason is that bar will stop you pretty much right on your chest, and some people don't even go all the way down to their chest, whereas dumbbells allow you to get that full stretch in the pecs as low as your body allows before driving back up. So I'm a big fan of that. Sean, you want to add anything so far?
For the upper body, not anything for that you're not already talking about. One thing I think is helpful for like joint health is doing more straight arm rows and straight arm pushes. So like I do like a scap series where, if you can see, but I'll take the rower and I'll just straight arm row to get the scapulas moving. And building that awareness of the shoulder blades is super crucial. I feel like a lot of people might miss. So some of my favorites are a straight arm row or a straight arm push up. So if I'm on the ground, I'm pushing my body up off the ground. I want to feel my shoulder blades wrap around. Right. And then one of my other favorite things is like a straight arm dip, where I'm dipping, but I'm driving my shoulders from my ears all the way to the ground. So those are a few of my favorite like scapular control movements. That'll aid pretty much everything in your upper body, because your shoulder blade is this freaking weird bone stuck on the back of your back, and it has to move for everything to function properly. And coming from someone who's fractured their shoulder blade in half, I got a T split in the back of my shoulder blade. I've done all sorts of shoulder work. I've had a shoulder surgery on the opposite side, so my shoulders are totally jacked up. And the reason I'm able to do Olympic lifts and some of these more intricate lifts is because of the the shoulder health that I try and prioritize. That's my warm-ups are like 20, 30 minutes, is because every workout is also a like physical therapy session.
Yeah. Another one I really like, I do a lot of external rotation movements. So I'll give you a quick background on why. I see a lot of people do internal rotation movements at the gym. All right. So let's say they're on a cable machine, the cable's over here, and they're pulling the cable in, controlling out, and pulling in. There's nothing wrong with strengthening the internal rotators of your shoulder. However, every pressing movement is an internal rotation movement, as well as when you do a chin up or a pull down, you're actually inwardly rotating the shoulder. So your internal rotators get a lot of work on all these other movements. It's the external rotators that are always weak in people. And if you think about physics, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. When you do a chin up and those internal rotators fire, if they don't have external rotators to push against them, it's like firing a cannon from a canoe. There's no foundational support. There's no agonist or antagonist muscle pushing against that agonist. So I'm a big fan of strengthening the external rotators of the shoulder. It is a quite common, problem, but you will see. Gosh, you'll see huge gains in your bench pressing, in your chin up strength, in your all your pressing movements, as well as chin ups, will get better and will get better faster because your external rotators are stronger. And so that internal rotator will have something to push against. It's really, really important. One of my favorites, one of the easiest ways and best ways to start, you always want to start supported versus unsupported. So here's a supported version, elbows on the knee, and we're rotating and we're just going lowering it all the way down and then coming up fast. That's usually one of my first ones. And you can see here just with kilo, which is a good account to follow. There's lying external rotators. There's arm at your side, because remember, your shoulder is a 360-degree ball and socket joint. So you need to be strong in every essentially plane of motion. So here's one with the arm at your side. Here's one where she's pulling across her body. Obviously, the elbow on the knee, you can do it both hands. Here's one where she's lying. And we're not going to get into line of pull and all these things, but if you think about where gravity's making the application, as well as where the line of pull is with the cable, these are just hitting the shoulder at all different angles, all different types, all different areas in the strength curve. And this gal, Alex, who's a great coach, has crazy strong shoulders, not just because she demos all these exercises,
right? Just killing it.
But because she's she's balanced. I can tell you that much.
You want to move on to lower body?
Yeah, let's do it. You want to start it off?
Oh man.
Actually, let's do one more. Let me do one more. I got one more I want to show.
Yeah.
Because this is a big one. I see it everywhere. I see it literally almost every day I'm in the gym. And I hate it. I'm sorry, but I do. It's the tricep kickback. Okay. So in this, so let's talk line of pull. I said we're not going to, but we're going to. So where's the line of pull in this exercise? I'm giving you, kind of an easy, I'm giving you, what am I trying to say? Whatever. Line of pull is gravity. Okay, so gravity is applying a force down to the ground. So from there to about there, okay, that motion, gravity is going this way. So there's really not much work being done by the triceps from essentially 0 degrees, if you want to call it 0, all the way through to whatever this angle is. Okay, it's definitely over 90 degrees. And then at the very end, okay, now the triceps are working. But from there, even from there, like you can see, gravity is still not going to be not going to be applying a force. So this whole portion of the range of motion is essentially negated and not doing anything. It literally is such a waste of time. And you're only getting work at the very end there when gravity is applying a force here, and the tricep has to straighten the elbow with weight against gravity. It's a silly exercise. The only way I would ever do this is if she was holding a cable. So in this position, the cable is now pulling this way. So now she has to overcome that weight. And now the tricep in this stretched position has to work. So you're strengthening it through the full range of motion. Not to mention what I see all the time, like this gal's bouncing for one. You can see her kind of rocking back and
Oh,
forth. Yeah. I've
was that
seen people
showing a mistake there?
she now that I saw that, I haven't watched this video. She probably was. I've seen people at different heights, so even higher up, and then so they're just getting like from there to there of the tricep. What I'd rather you do is go overhead. Now I prefer this trolley set kind of around the waist, but he has it all the way down. If it's up here, again, you're really kind of negating some of the strength curve and some of the range of motion. But at the bottom here, boom. So the long head of the tricep crosses the shoulder. So this tricep is in fully stretched position in this point. If you've never tried to straighten your elbow with weight, it's really tough down here
Really
because
hard
you're already stretched, right? So, so strengthen your triceps in the full range of motion. And people are like, well, what do I need to strengthen my triceps? Well, when you go up to shoot a jumper, what are you doing? You're straightening your elbow, right? So you got shoulders working, and then as you straighten your elbow, those are triceps. Okay.
Triceps,
So
baby.
say what?
The triceps, baby.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to have, better range, if you're getting tired, if you can't get the ball to the basket, from 30 feet, nowadays with Steph Curry changing the game and other shooters, man, people are pulling it from deep. You will pull it easier from deep if you have stronger triceps. And if you look at where his arm is, it's overhead. So we're actually training the tricep in that, man, look at that jumper. When we back up,
Whew.
oh gosh.
Still got it.
Still got it. So we're training the triceps in that position that it normally is in when you take a jump shot, as well as it's getting strong through the full range of motion, which helps the integrity of the elbow, the integrity of the shoulder, all those sorts of things. Sean, that's just one I wanted to touch on because I see it often.
Yeah, no worries.
And let me say this really quick. Anytime you do overhead tricep work, it strengthens predominantly the long head of the tricep, which lies on the back side of your arm, not this part that you see. That's a lateral head. The long head of the tricep is the biggest really part of the tricep, and it gives you a much bigger arm, which I've never heard any guy say I want smaller arms. Every guy wants bigger arms. So there's some added bonuses there. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so got a couple minutes here. I think we're kind of winding down, but okay, so I have a few things. So goblet squat's probably my favorite exercise. Any sort of squat I'm gonna love. For the purposes of time though, loaded sleds, you guys are severely missing out if you're not pushing a sled or towing a sled somehow. So I was working with a guy who does a lot of speed training. He trains over 100 NFL and Olympian athletes right now for speed. It's kind of killing the game. Shout out Les Spellman, check him out. But he's put in like a lifetime worth of application and research into this. And basically what he's finding is the horizontal displacement of force is specific to the body angles and the weight that you're dragging. So nice. If you guys want to actually get down court and move and sprint faster, the loaded sleds will get you there quicker than in that direction, right? In that direction. If you want to get down court, right, the loaded sleds will get you there probably more so than your squats and deadlifts. From a guy who squats and deadlifts almost every day or every training session, that's not a knock on squats and deadlifts. That's a sport specific thing you guys need to be working on. Get a sled, get pushing that direction so that it's the same angles and the same movements while you're on the court. So it's specific to the angle, specific to the load, specific to the speed. So there's a lot of things to add in there, but grab a sled and get working on the sled. You're going to see immense changes, not only for the court on court, but I mean, it's friggin' hard. You load up a sled, you're going to feel like you just did a set of lunges with 100-pound dumbbells. Like you're going to feel it. So, and it's a single leg exercise. Single leg exercises I absolutely love because single legs challenge the hip. If I'm on 2 feet, my hips basically stay stable. But if I'm on one leg, I have a wobble sensation potential in my hips, which forces more core activation, which forces more adductors, which forces more glute stabilizers, and which forces more total musculature in the hips to maintain stability. So these are my hip sockets. Double leg, they kind of move like this. But if you go a single leg, now I'm adding different rotations, different torques, different loads on your hips. So if I could say do anything that's going to enhance your sport performance on the lower body, I would say do single leg exercises and then get on a sled, because that's a specific single leg exercise.
Yep.
If I can keep ranting,
go ahead.
One thing that I really love, my favorite squat is a front squat. If you guys can get the elbows under and the wrist under the bar, the lat engagement is going to help the core and help the hips stabilize. If you have to go shoulder, I'm still okay with that, because I'm still getting a lot of the lower part and the body down here. My favorite modification is to get a towel and just throw the towel around the bar, so that the bar is right here, but I have a towel on the bar and I'm grabbing the towel up here. So it gives me better range of motion while I can still keep my elbows up. Phil, I don't know if you can show that, if you could pull up a video on like a towel front squat, maybe that might come up, or like a modification. But
well, we use the wrist straps at the gym ourselves.
We use the wrist straps, which also, where I think the towel is for explaining purposes, explains the concept super easy to picture a towel that I'm wrapped around the bar. But those elbows up, that's going to give you a lot of core. So I like the front squat more than the back squat, because it keeps you honest. The front squat is going to keep your torso up. It's going to force more ankle dorsiflexion, which is something we want when we're running, sprinting, and jumping. It's going to give me a lot of that quad dominance. And the lower I go in the front squat, I'm actually working quite a bit of glutes. And the range of motion on that is more athletic position. So we're getting more parts of our body that relate closer to athletics. In my opinion, the back squat I absolutely love, but the back squat is easier to get away with when you're doing it wrong. You can slide around. It's got more degrees of freedom for error. So I usually try and progress the front squat or a goblet squat.
I actually can't find a towel one. I did put towel grip.
Oh, okay. Well, that works too. So this is the idea. You just wrap the towel around the bar and you just hold both ends of the towel. So here's the concept. And that's how you keep your elbows up on a front squat. So he's got space between his hands and the bar, given if he's got poor wrist flexibility or
huge arms.
Or huge arms. Yeah, shoot, man, who am I talking to? Huge arms. So you definitely want to get the elbows up. It's going to be a stronger position for you. So front squat's one of my favorite squats for all the reasons that I listed.
I always say we want that. We point the elbows forward, or I say we want that upper arm at parallel to the ground.
Yeah.
Throughout the lift, which when your chest comes forward at the bottom, you got to lift your elbows up a little bit more, which is tricky. Yep. And like you said, this is a really good fix.
So if you have tight lats right in there, that big old giant muscle under your armpit, this will be really tough. So you might want to grab a foam roller and foam roll out those lats a little bit before you hit that session, or do that the day before or something. But it's going to be really helpful for you guys. So the sled work, the front squats, and then did I say anything else?
Go do the hip bridge. You're talking about hip bridges and thrusts.
Yeah. So glute bridge is another one of my favorites, right? So we do deadlifts, we pull off the ground. Sometimes the back is an issue on deadlifts. One of my favorite other posterior chain exercises is a glute bridge. Either I'm on the ground with the bar over my waist, or I've got my back supported on a bench and I've got the bar on my waist. These are really good thrust hip extension movements. So we talked about in sports how we're always looking after, we're trying to get triple extension, where I've got my hips through, my knees are straight, and my toes are straight, pointed. So I like that full jump position. The glute bridge is going to give you a very, very specific hip extension. Basically, the knees stay bent the whole time through the movement. So all the action happens. All the action happens at the hip and at the hamstring. So this is the glute bridge off the floor. You can see he's got his hips all the way through. This is going to be really good for developing the hip extensors, the propulsor muscles, the things that push you forward, very similar to the sled movement. So if you don't have access to a sled, you definitely want to be doing a glute bridge or a hip thrust. The difference between those, the glute bridge comes off the floor, and the hip thrust comes off a back elevation like this. So the same way the chin-ups and pull-ups are a little bit different, that's how we're differentiating these exercises. So this is a hip thrust. Elevating the back gives you a bigger range of motion, so you can put more stretch on your glutes and hamstrings. The back elevation also is going to get a little bit more glute max and the lower part of your glute closer to the hamstring. Whereas if you're on the floor, you're going to get the upper half of your glutes and more the glute medius as a supporting hip musculature. So two really, really, really good exercises to add in. You guys are going to feel this in the hamstrings. You're going to feel this in the hips. This is that last pop you're extending when you're going for your jumper, or that initial burst forward when you're driving to score to the basket. So hip extensors, very, very important, but sled, single leg work, and those hip thrusts and front squats are probably my go-to.
Yeah.
I like rack pull deadlifts, don't get me wrong, but if I'm doing it, I'd probably go there.
Yeah, I'm a fan of rack pulls as well.
I love rack pull. Probably my favorite.
I'm going to share my screen again. A lot of people, a lot of basketball players do leg extensions, which we all know what that is. Leg extensions, where you're sitting and you're just straightening your knee, or they do leg presses, where you're either sitting horizontal and pushing the sled essentially with the weights, or you're on an incline and you're pushing that sled thing with the weights up. So an incline leg press. Both really fun because you can usually put on a hell of a lot of weight and you feel really strong. And there's different variations. And again, I'm not saying the leg press is wrong, but what are you doing in that motion? Both of those movements are open chain. Now, what open chain means is the weight that you are moving, you are applying force to the thing that is moving, versus a closed chain movement is you are applying force to an immovable object. Now, athletics is almost always closed chain movements. We're applying force to the ground to run and jump, essentially, for most sports. And that's no different in basketball. So I'm a huge fan of ground-based movements. I'm a huge fan of closed chain movements. Again, I'm not saying you can't throw a leg press in there from time to time. I don't do it hardly ever. And I never program leg extensions. I only use those if a physical therapist says there's a rehab reason, because of the coordination of the muscles in that movement. But that's a different story, as well as the sheer force on the knee. Anyway, so I think you should do a front fill elevated split squat. And again, I talk to these all the time till I'm blue in the face. But if you look at the bottom end, you got a great looking. If you kind of cut off this part, that's a great bottom end of a squat. Mm-hmm. We talked about dorsiflexion, Sean did earlier. We know that dorsiflexion, lack of it leads to knee injuries. So this movement will help you improve your dorsiflexion. This movement gets the knee in front of the toe, which is very good and healthy for the knees. Some folks in the group right now are talking about the knees over toe guy and his programming.
Oh, he's cool.
I like him too. This is a great exercise that I have in all my programs. Everyone, it's kind of a rite of passage. They have to go through this exercise, but it gets the knee in front of the toe and it gets full flexion at the knee. Because the knee is in front of the toe, it makes the VMO work overtime. The VMO is on the inside of the thigh here, and it helps to stabilize the knee. Obviously, it gets your hips in a deep squat position, preparing you for squats later. And then this back leg is stretched. It's doing an incredible dynamic stretch on the hip flexors, on the psoas primarily. So most people have tight hip flexors. So this exercise hits so many different reasons and so many different things that most people need to improve on in basketball. It's silly not to do it. Add to that fact that because the adductors, which are kind of they're almost like groin muscles. They're on the inside of your thigh here. So you can't see them on this leg, but they're on the side here. Because they don't cross the knee, so they're getting stretched. So in this position, when he goes to push up, it really trains the adductors well because they are in a hugely mechanical disadvantage. So you're training the adductors, you're training ankle dorsiflexion, you're training the VMOs, you're improving your knee integrity by getting that full flexion. You're stretching the hip flexors. Like there are so many things that this exercise can do. And the fact that it's a quad dominant exercise, it's better out for your quads. You know, let's just say that. So yeah, the leg press can get you maybe bigger and make your quads bigger, but from a functional standpoint for the basketball court, I got to say we got to do the front foot elevated split squat. I said at the beginning of the show, what'd you say, Sean?
I said, I'm with you. I would have listed it, but I was saving it for you.
Yeah, because you know I was going to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
I said at the beginning of the show, I did split squats today without my front foot elevated. This is essentially level one. You have the front foot elevated, and then you move to flat surface, and then you move to the rear foot elevated. And I see a lot of players do rear foot elevated without the mobility. And they do it with the bench too high. I never want to go above middle of the shin in terms of if I'm doing a rear foot elevated, where most people just, turn a bench sideways and use the bench. I don't do that. I think it's too high, and I think it limits your range of motion on that front leg, which is the one doing the work. So that's one exercise I wanted to talk about. Another one I want to talk about, which we don't have video for, is box squats. So a lot of people do box squats. Again, there's a time and a place perhaps, but I say do a regular squat, do a full motion squat, get all the way down, all the way up. I've said it before, full squat is redundant, but do a full squat versus a box squat. The box squat is more a hip dominant squat. We're going to get our hip dominant movements, like Sean said, on a lot of isometric single leg movements. We're going to do deadlifts. We're going to do pulls from the floor. Those will get our backside and our posterior chain. On the squat, we want quad dominant movements. So we want to bend the knees first. We want to drop down towards the toes. So I prefer a regular squat versus a box squat. So that's another one that I wanted to share. Sean, anything to add?
Leg exercises. I'm big on glutes, man. I mean, in my education and my experience, glutes are responsible for 90% of knee and ankle issues. Yeah. So in my dynamic warm up, I grab one of those little mini bands. I throw it around my knees. I do my little lateral walks. I do a whole glute series, but single leg RDL is probably the next exercise I would add on there.
Yep.
So the single leg RDL is going to eccentrically train the hamstring, but it's also going to train the glute med. The glute med is your frontal plane hip stabilizer, or stabilizes your hips from side to side. Oh, hello. So your glute med is going to stabilize your hips from side to side and prevent you from collapsing when you're on one leg. Yeah. So a single leg RDL for me is going to train the hamstring. I like it with a soft knee, a bent knee, so that slacks the hamstring a little bit to give me a little bit more glute action. But that's another really good, if the front foot elevated split squat is the go-to single leg anterior chain exercise, then my go-to single leg posterior chain exercise is probably a single leg RDL. Cool. For all the reasons, for stability, strength, and balance and proprioception too.
I love it. Let's talk about abs real quick. There's 4 exercises I want to go over. And again, these are all, little shout out to myself. Go to Gephardt Strength on YouTube. There's some good stuff on there. But I have a whole ab series on Do This, Not That. And a lot of people will use an ab crunch machine similar to this. Really not that functional. I much rather prefer you do a crunch on the Swiss ball. All right. Now, I also want to crunch on a Swiss ball. Here comes our visitor again. My apologies. Say hi to Cat. We have 2 cats. This is one of them. This is Johnny. A lot of people do crunches or sit-ups as well with their feet pinned under something heavy. Now, if you think about that motion and what you're doing, a lot of what you're training is most people are pulling and applying pressure up into that weighted thing that they're supported against, which is really using the hip flexors. It's not training your abdominals to actually flex the spine or round the spine, which is what that, 6-pack, the rectus abdominis muscles are supposed to do. So instead of doing the sit up with your feet pinned under something where you're actually training the improper sequencing of the core, you're training your hip flexors, if not as much, or if not more, as much as the core and your rectus abdominis. Do a crunch on a Swiss ball. And remember, the rectus abdominis is fast twitch muscle fiber. It's type 2 muscle fiber. So we can go real heavy here. I've had guys use 100-pound, 120-pound dumbbells even, and get to 12, 15 reps. It's not that uncommon. But you can see the hip flexors aren't working. The ball really helps to pre-stretch the abs. So in this position, he's back into extension, the abs stretch. Remember, muscles work better when they're stretched immediately before they're used. Another thing with the sit-ups, when you're sitting on a ground, it's actually really detrimental to your back. It can potentially do some damage to your back over time. So add this version of the crunch. You can also use a cable machine and a rope. I like that that variation as well. This is an old Paul Chek exercise I like. A lot of people do these sideways tilting, kind of things. I don't even have somebody attempting.
Side bends?
Yeah, but the side bends where someone's holding a dumbbell and they do this.
Yeah.
That's actually not bad of an exercise for the QLs, for the quadratus lumborum, because the QL, the lower back muscle, actually side bends, side flexes the spine. For obliques, we want to do more rotational exercises, and there's a lot of them. I just made this video with like I said, an old Paul Chek exercise with a cable wood chop, because you're doing more rotation. It's much more dynamic. It's very powerful. You can do them seated. There's different variations, different angles, but I do prefer this motion over a side bend, unless you're obviously trying to train the QLs. Then the last ab I wanted to touch on was the Pallof Press. Now, a lot of people do planks. And are you raising your hand, Sean? I'm sorry.
I was fist bumping your Pallof Press.
Oh, yeah. So a lot of people do planks. I have seen on the internet a 57-year-old woman hold a plank for 57 minutes on her birthday. Now, while that might be cool and fun for Instagram or whatnot, there is no training stimulus there. Sean, what's that quote I always want you to say that I can never remember? You need to have a load that is beyond...
Oh, beyond your habitual level.
Yeah, beyond your habitual level. So if you can hold something for 57 minutes, you're not getting any training from it. It's just something that you can do. I've also seen boot camps where there's a row of 10 people and there's 10 different variations of a plank. As well as basketball's not played on all fours. Basketball's played on 2 feet. So the Pallof Press is a much better exercise. You want to see 90-degree angles here. But that force, watch this video if you want to get more breakdown. That force being applied, where's another? Let's just back up. Sorry, folks. That force being applied, this might not look like much, but this guy is working hard in this exercise. It is a difficult exercise. It is an anti-rotation exercise. The core, and it's isometric, which is why I used it against the plank, because you are just fighting that weight from pulling you back. You can do different angles. You can do different levels. But from an isometric standpoint, from a core standpoint, the Pallof Press, from a basketball functional standpoint, you're on your feet. How many times are you dribbling the ball up the court under pressure? People are giving you an arm bar, trying to push you off your balance, and you got to maintain rigidity through your torso, through your core. Or when you're driving through the lane, or you're up in the air and you get bumped, you try not to do this type of thing. You try to maintain your rigidity through the core. It's really important. So if you're doing planks, maybe next time try not to do a plank. Try some Pallof presses and see what you think. Sean, I know you love this exercise. What do you want to say about it?
I'm a big fan of anti-movement core exercises. So when I say anti-movement, obviously the Pallof Press, he's resisting movement. So from an evolutionary biology standpoint, only one of our core muscles attaches from one bone to the next. And we know that when bones attach from bone to bone, they're made to produce movement. Well, the first exercise Phil showed you, that dumbbell Swiss ball crunch, trains your rectus abdominis, which is the only muscle in our core that attaches from one bone to another bone. So the theory is thinking that that's your sit-up muscle. That's that gets you out of bed. That muscle is made to produce spine flexion. So train that. For training that, you want to do movement-based exercises. But however, we have 3 other core muscles under that muscle. So we have our internal and external obliques, and we also have our transversus abdominis. And anatomically, these muscles attach to other connective tissue. They do not attach to another bone. So the thinking in function is that these muscles are meant to stabilize rather than they are meant to move. So I'm a big fan of stability-based anti-movement core exercises. So the Pallof Press is one that I really like. I really like a plank, but everyone sucks at planking because they don't know how to do it right. So I only program planks for people if I can either teach them how or show them how. I'm also a big fan of like tall plank with a shoulder tap, or a tall plank where you lift a foot off the ground. And so we go from 4 points of contact to 3 points of contact. So we create some rotation through the core, through the hips. Those are good ways to improve your plank. The Pallof Press is an anti-rotation exercise. Like Phil said, there's tons of ways to do that. I've seen some barbell landmine work where you got the barbell going. You got the Pallof Press where you're holding. I've seen people hold the Pallof and take lateral steps. We can take the Pallof and go overhead with it. We can take it and do punches with it. A lot of things you can do with the Pallof. Probably one of my favorite anti-rotational exercises. And then anti-lateral bending. So preventing side bending. So why that's important is if I'm doing a lateral movement or I'm sprinting and I'm cutting, and you ever see somebody kind of topple over their hips, they get low, but their body stays high and they kind of topple over their hips. Well, that's poor lateral stability. That's lateral flexion. And I want anti-lateral flexion. So when I stick, I want my body to stick with my hips. And so I love doing lots of carries, loaded carries, 1-arm farmer carries, 2-arm farmer carries, where I just literally grab one dumbbell. I'm lined up from nose to belly button, and I'm just walking with this weight. Some people call it a suitcase carry. I'm a fan of doing that with a kettlebell up here, different ways to load the shoulders. I'll do, because it's still, if it's one-sided, it's still leaning me one way. So I love carries of all variations, but that anti-lateral bend is a really good way. You can just grab a cable off the bottom of the rack, load it up really heavy, and just stand there and watch it try to pull you down, but you're going to sit there and stick it. So a lot of really good ways. I do like planks. Another way we can, if you don't feel the plank, a lot of people sag in their back, so they take the core out of the plank with that arch in their back. The way we talked about pull-ups, where you keep your feet in front of you, you can just hang on a bar and keep your feet in front of you, and you're going to feel that anti-extension. Your back wants to bend, but if you just go into a hang on a bar and you just kick your feet out in front of you, any level of holding your feet out is going to be really good. I also really like leg lowers or leg lifts, as long as you can smash your low back on the ground. If you're doing any ab exercise on the ground and your back starts to arch so that I can see daylight under your back, you just lost the effect of your core. So you need to scoop your hips under you, smash your back to the ground, and have no daylight from your tailbone to your neck, or like mid shoulders. So the anti-extension, the plank style exercises, or the rollouts are a really good way to get that anti-extension. So I'm either using a Swiss ball and I'm rolling out on something, I'm on my knees and I'm extending away, but I'm trying to prevent my back from arching. A lot of people go really far away on that exercise. They roll really far, but it arches their back. And like, such a good exercise. And I'm like, you're missing the point. It's like box jumps for me, right? Like they're like doing it to do it, as opposed to doing it to get the training effect. So anti-extension, any sort of rollout or holding your feet out in front of you. The Pallof presses for anti-rotation is really good. And then the anti-lateral bend, I love carries. And then the dumbbell crunches on the Swiss ball, I actually sometimes use a Bosu ball for that same exercise. You get a really good pre-stretch on the abs. Like Phil said, you're extending the range of motion. So those abs have to work a lot harder. But big fan of anti-extension, anti-rotation, and anti-lateral bending core exercises. And then wood chops, other really good way to go dynamic with it. You can even do your wood chops as anti-movement, another good variation on those. So usually your core needs to be your anchor. So everything resistance starts in the core and works its way out. So whatever exercise I'm doing, you'll hear people say every exercise is a core exercise. And that's because your core starts the bracing process for every subsequent movement, whether or not I'm bench pressing or leg pressing or overhead pressing, whatever, or pulling anything or doing anything, your core needs to be engaged and braced. So big fan of core training. If you guys aren't doing any of those core exercises we talked about, just look up like anti-rotation, anti-extension, or anti-core movement. And then that'll give you a really good base for some really effective core work. It's hard to not move. It's really hard to not move.
Well, that's why I brought up that used car balloon salesman guy. Like, if you're here in the States, it's a very common sight at these used car dealerships. This little balloon thing.
Rocky little inflatable tube man.
Yeah, I like to say if you don't have core strength, you're just kind of this wobbly, floppy thing, right? Like, but we need to be rigid. I mean, a lot of times in basketball,
stiffness.
Yeah, you need to be able to take a hit and not move and be able to brace.
And then to that point, being rigid transfers force better. So joint stiffness is something we're training for. We want to be able to transfer force from the ground through my hips up into my shoulders, or what have you. But core stiffness is going to help a lot of things. It's makes you not look floppy.
Yeah, totally. Well, Sean, that was a good one. We should cut it there. How can people get a hold of you?
I'm at SeanDoesStrength.com and Sean Does Strength on Instagram with little underscores after each word.
Yeah, Sean Does Strength. And he's got a really fun page. I love following him. He's got some fun stuff on there, as well as, it's like his training blog, and a lot of his stuff is directly transferable to you as a basketball player. So check out Sean Does Strength. And you coach people online?
Maybe. Depends.
Yeah. Okay.
Not yet.
Cool. Yeah. So that's how you get a hold of Sean Does Strength. And then if you want to find me, gepardstrength.com, check out my YouTube channel. I'm actually taking a pause from Instagram. So there's a post up there from last week, I think, but I don't think I'll be on there for a while. Just trying to, man, with the family, gosh, social media takes up so much of our time. And so we're trying to really be more simple. So that's a side note, but you probably won't see me on Instagram for a while. But reach out to me. I do have a few spots available for online training. If you are wanting to train, improve your conditioning, improve your strength, improve your explosiveness, get a higher vertical jump. I love doing that. I have a remote program. So that's it for now. Sean, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Appreciate all your words. And until next week, we'll see you.
Take care, guys.